Hello people there in internet amateurs, probably not, but if you happen to stumble upon this video, today we are going to be finding each toilet bowl game of each week. We all know the toilet bowl games that happened at the end of last season, you know, the Giants versus the Raiders, and then we have some iconic bowls like the Icy Hot Bowl, but you know, each week is going to have one of those type of games and we're going to locate them today. Week 1 is a pretty easy game to find. New York Jets versus the Tennessee Titans. You know, two teams that I'm pretty sure finished with the same record. You know, the Jets had the number 2 overall pick. The Titans had the number 4 overall pick. And honestly, I think the only reason the NFL even made this a game is because they needed one of these two teams to start off 1-0. Because I don't think any of them would have ended up with the win otherwise. Honorable mention, the Miami versus Las Vegas game. But I think the Raiders are going to win this game. Honestly, week 2 was kind of a harder one to find, but I do think it's going to be the Panthers versus the Falcons. Just because both these teams usually struggle at the beginning of the season. And I think Bryce Young from recent history, he's probably going to start off throwing a few picks. Going to have to get into the flow. And then for the Falcons, either one of their left-handed quarterbacks are going to be throwing picks. And honestly, I would say at least over 3 picks are thrown in this game. With the week 3, I'm going to have to go the Raiders versus the Saints. Honestly, not a horrible matchups, but the other ones this week are nothing too crazy compared to this one. And it kind of depends who's starting for the Raiders. I can see Fernando or Kirk Cousins. I don't really think it matters. This is obviously the worst game of the week. But the Saints obviously have an easy schedule, so their record's probably like 2-0 at this point. So we're going to think highly of them, but still it's going to end up being a toilet bowl at the end of the day. For week 4, I'm going to have to go the Cardinals versus the Giants. Just because the Cardinals are the worst team. I think the Giants could be good, but every other matchup is kind of like makes sense. You know, it's not awful. But I think the Cardinals are going to be so bad. And maybe even the Giants, some people are saying they're going to be good. I personally think they're going to be good. But I could see a world where they're not amazing. Week 5, quite an easy decision. We have the Browns versus the Jets. Nothing more to say. None of these teams are going to look amazing up to this point. We know what's going to happen. This happens every year. This matchup is actually quite common most of the time. And nobody watches it. Honestly, week 6 provides some pretty good matchups, to be honest. So it's kind of hard to locate one. But if you have to throw one in there, I would have it down to maybe the Titans versus the Colts. Or the Saints versus the Giants. But honestly, both those matchups aren't even awful. It's just there's better ones this week. Week 7, another one of those easy ones. Give me the Browns versus the Titans. But honestly, coming in a close second is the Dolphins versus the Jets. And to be honest, maybe the Browns versus Titans one's actually better than the Dolphins versus Jets. They're on like the same level, but we'll just have to see how each team starts out. Alright, week 8, give me the Jets versus the Raiders. A lot of these teams are appearing multiple times, but that's just how bad in poverty they are. But at this point in time, I have to see Fernando maybe starting against, honestly, Cade Klubnik. Because I don't think Gino's going to survive more than 7 weeks with the Jets, to be honest. If he's doing what he did last season. But, you know, just realize Gino is going against the Raiders again. You know, the team that he threw like 20 picks for last season. So maybe he'll just get the urge to throw 20 more picks in this one game alone. Week 9, give me the Browns versus Saints. Again, not an awful matchup. Honestly, I think both of these teams have young, intriguing players. But out of all the matches this week, definitely the most toilet bowl-like. Week 10, probably the Dolphins versus the Colts. Another one of those weeks where it's not awful. You could argue maybe Panthers, Saints. But, you know, honorable mention, Steelers versus Bengals. Maybe Icy Hot Bowl 2.0. You know, if Joe Burrow gets hurt like he does every season. That would be pretty fun to watch. Or maybe Aaron Rodgers gets hurt and we don't get to see the Icy Hot Bowl. But we'd love to see it. Week 11, another one of those weeks with nothing crazy. Maybe you could throw into the conversation Titans versus Cowboys. Maybe you could throw in Cardinals versus Chiefs. But honestly, this is one of those weeks where I can't identify one, which I would love. Week 12 has some pretty good toilet bowls. You know, Las Vegas versus Cleveland. That's a good toilet bowl. the Jets versus the Dolphins, an amazing toilet bowl. Those two really just are what the toilet bowl is for. For these teams who they're not going to make it to the Super Bowl, but they have to come out on top with something, and that is the toilet bowl trophy. Week 13 is definitely a hard one because a lot of teams are on byes now. But honestly, give me Panthers versus Vikings. Because if Kyler doesn't work, they have to put 9 back in. And 9 versus Bryce Young going to be pretty fun. Because these other matchups against the bad teams, Eagles, they're going to BTA the Cardinals. Denver's going to sweep the floor with the Dolphins. Green Bay, probably going to kill the Saints. Washington kills the Titans. So nothing too intriguing here. Honestly, for week 14, I really don't have one. I really don't. But this is the point of the season where the true toilet bowls actually matter. I've been using the term the whole video. They weren't really toilet bowls. We don't know how these teams are going to pan out. But this is the time of the season where first overall pick contention matters. And who may be there? Maybe the Falcons and Browns. Honestly, that's the only matchup I can see. Maybe Falcons-Browns. Week 15. This is probably going to actually be this season's toilet bowl. You know, as I was talking about, the Raiders-Giants was actually the toilet bowl. This season's is going to be the Jets versus Cardinals. These are the two teams that I think are going to be fighting for the first overall pick. And to be honest, I don't even know who wins this. I think the Cardinals have the better overall team, but who knows with these mystery injuries, you know. They just come out of nowhere maybe the day before someone, quote-unquote, doesn't feel good. You know, that's just what this part of the season's really about. You know, these fake injuries to get the number 1 overall pick. Week 16, give me Cardinals Saints. Week 17, give me the Raiders Cardinals. That's the obvious choice. But hear me out. Steelers Titans. Yeah, I could see that. I can see that actually happening if the Steelers don't perform well. Maybe if Rodgers gets hurt or something. And, you know, I don't think Tennessee's going to be good regardless. I can definitely see that being a real toilet bowl. Week 18 is impossible to say what's going to be a toilet bowl because half these teams are playing backups. So I'm not even going to give you a toilet bowl, to be honest. I think all these games are even right now until week 18. So this is the stopping point in the video, and there's not much more to say. You know, we looked through the toilet bowls of each week. Most of them were the same exact teams, but that's just how poverty of an organization they are. And if anyone watches, you know, I appreciate that. And I would appreciate a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.